Mogadishu attack. South Africa's cabinet approves an action plan to combat racism. And 4 Congolese patients are missing following an attack on an Ebola treatment center. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. And with me is Roman Young with a preview of your business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The former Liberian Deputy Central Bank Governor has been arrested over a money printing scandal. Kenya and Ethiopia renew their commitments to a $25 billion port, road and rail project. We'll have the details of those stories and lots more coming your way in the next 60 minutes. But first, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, let's start the hour in Somalia, where security forces have killed 3 militants holed up in a building in the capital, Mogadishu. The battle for the area is now officially over, according to police officials. Islamist al-Shabaab fighters set off an explosive device outside the hotel known as Makkah al-Mukarramah late on Thursday, killing at least 29 people. They then fled to a neighboring building. Somali special forces were deployed on Friday to flush them out. Now, this comes amid fears that the death toll would eventually rise. And according to conservative figures that are yet to be verified by authorities, 29 people have been killed. Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for the attack, which started on Thursday evening with 2 car bombs outside that hotel. They have since been engaging Somali soldiers who are trying to access the building. Well, authorities mounted an offensive to dislodge those militants holed up inside that building near the hotel. And as we understand it now, at least 30 people have been confirmed dead. Here's CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo with this update.
Emergency services rushed to ferry the wounded to hospitals as security forces cordoned off an active scene of attack along a strategic road in downtown Mogadishu. Thursday's twin attacks targeted hotels and business centers along Makkah al-Mukarramah Road as gun battle continues to rage in Mogadishu between Somali forces and al-Shabaab fighters.
I was inside the Makkah al-Mukarramah hotel when the car bomb detonated. Heavy gunfire ensued for a while. The blast caused a huge fire and smoke covered the whole hotel. We couldn't see anything. Fortunately, we escaped with minor injuries.
Authorities have condemned the latest attack, saying it's meant to create fear among the public.
Al-Shabaab used 2 vehicles loaded with explosives to carry out the attack. This is a terrorist attack meant to create fear among the public. The group is targeting public places and markets. We condemn al-Shabaab attacks that have no agenda other than frustrating recovery efforts.
The complex attack is the deadliest so far this year, with most city hospitals struggling to cope with serious cases. Meanwhile, militant group al-Shabaab says its main target was the Makkah al-Mukarramah Hotel, a popular hotel in downtown Mogadishu, mostly frequented by senior government officials and security personnel. Hospitals are appealing for blood donations as the number of people wounded in the attack continues to rise. Former Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud was among those who showed up at this blood donation campaign and called on militant group to put an end to years of bloodbath in the country that has claimed thousands of lives. But the militant group spokesperson says its main objective is to topple the internationally recognized government in Somalia.
If it's power and political inclusion that al-Shabaab wants, then that can be arranged. But as long as the attacks like this happen and innocent victims are killed, there is no room for dialogue.
The group has targeted the hotel on most occasions, including a deadly siege in 2015. The Makkah al-Mukarramah Hotel has been targeted multiple times in the past, attacks that have claimed scores of lives, including a senior Somali diplomat to the United Nations in 2015. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
Now, this is not the first time that al-Shabaab has staged such a daring attack. Let's take a look back at some of the more brazen raids that have rocked Somalia.
The attack on the hotel Makkah al-Mukarramah is not the first one. In 2014, suspected al-Shabaab militants attacked the hotel with a car bomb. However, there were no deaths apart from a few injuries as government soldiers repulsed the militants. Nevertheless, the group is arguably the most notorious in the region, whose activities have left a trail of blood, death, and carnage in its wake. In February 2015, 20 people were killed when the militants struck the Central Hotel in Mogadishu. The siege lasted for almost 2 days. However, the October 14, 2017 massive bomb that rocked Mogadishu is still the worst face of terrorism to be witnessed in Somalia. Over 500 people were killed when a truck full of explosives went off at a roadblock in Mogadishu. No group claimed responsibility, but fingers were pointed at al-Shabaab. Foreign soldiers working under the al-Masam umbrella have not been spared either. In 2016, over 60 Kenyan soldiers were killed after al-Shabaab fighters raided their camp in Addis. Ugandan and Burundian soldiers have also been killed in similar attacks. As al-Shabaab fights to topple the Somali government and establish a strict Sharia rule, its bloody footprint is being felt not just in Somalia, but also across the region. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
South Africa's Minister of International Relations, Lindy Mtongana, and her French counterpart, Jean-Yves Le Drian, have signed a number of agreements aimed at enhancing relations between the two countries. The leaders co-chaired the bilateral forum for political dialogue in Pretoria on Wednesday afternoon. CGTN's Lindy Mtongana has more.
The meeting between the two ministers afforded a platform for discussions on continuing the advancement of existing relations as well as cooperation between South Africa and France.
South Africa and France share interests and common values, including the promotion of peace and security, human rights, basic human values, democracy, the rule of law, and sustainable development. These interests and values and common objectives are underpinned by a strategic bilateral, regional, and multilateral relationship.
France and South Africa are really united in terms of many strategic agreements, and it allows us to respond together to all the great challenges of our time.
This meeting was held to review and confirm the direction of existing programs and agreements, and to also identify new opportunities which both governments can explore. The two ministers also took this opportunity to reaffirm their countries' beliefs in multilateralism.
France and South Africa share the belief that the enormous challenges that we are faced with today require strong partnerships such as ours in order to find concrete solutions. It is also the nature of our common commitment to multilateralism, and this is multiculturalism is being put into question today, and we want to work together to solidify and strengthen multilateralism in the world.
It is imperative then that we now move forward together and combine our efforts towards ensuring a better world, a secure future, a successful South Africa, a successful France, and Africa and Europe.
South Africa and France signed agreements in, amongst others, space cooperation, basic and higher education, and biodiversity fields. During his visit, the French Prime Minister is expected to visit French companies based in South Africa. Close to 400 French companies are based here, employing more than 30,000 people directly. As part of the visit, the minister will also pay tribute to late former South African President Nelson Mandela and other struggle icons by visiting Robben Island, where they were incarcerated. Lindy Mtongana for CGTN in Pretoria, South Africa.
And let's head to neighboring Zimbabwe now, where the United Nations Humanitarian Affairs Coordinator Mark Lowcock is appealing for relief aid as the country goes through an economic crisis, which has all been worsened by drought. At the same time, Lowcock has announced $10 million in relief for the people of the Southern African nation.
The deepening economic crisis in Zimbabwe is being felt by the common person. Apart from high inflation rates and cost of living, the drought in the region has worsened an already bad situation. The residents of the rural areas are feeling and leaving the tough times.
I don't work, but my husband has a business through which he sells bananas that he hoards for Mbare. So now I cannot get enough money for my child to go to school because we have to pay rent and buy the food we need.
We just boil some nuts and a bit of maize and eat that in the afternoon. The children also carry this to school.
The United Nations Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator Mark Lowcock was in Zimbabwe on a fact-finding mission.
We met some people who are trying to sustain a vending business, selling fruit and vegetables on the side of the street, and you can make a bit of money doing that. But there's too many people here who don't have the wherewithal to do that and who are resorting to begging or to coping strategies that are very worrying, particularly in respect of women and very, very young girls.
Lowcock pledged $10 million that will go into offering humanitarian assistance to poor populations in Zimbabwe. The relief is expected to reach over 5.3 million people who are in need of humanitarian assistance. At the same time, he launched a $234 million flash appeal from the international community. The funds will be used to provide food, health, water, sanitation, hygiene, and protection support for 2.2 million people for the next 6 months. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Uganda has summoned Rwanda's ambassador after reported trade disruptions between the two countries. Over the past 2 days, trucks loaded with goods from Uganda have been stuck at the border. Here's CGTN's Michael Baleke with more.
Around 150 trucks carrying merchandise have been waiting at several border crossings with Rwanda. The Rwanda Revenue Authority says it's restricting cargo at Katuna because it's improving the infrastructure at the border post. But Uganda says it appears the restrictions also extend to private vehicles and at other several border crossings.
Apart from the temporary closure as a result of construction, we haven't received another official communication as to why, for example, Rwandese nationals are not being allowed to come to Uganda and why vehicles are not being allowed into Rwanda.
Relations between the two countries have been strained. There have been accusations and denials about spying and harsh treatment of nationals from the two respective countries.
We have no policy, we have no practice, there is no witch hunt against Rwandese in Uganda. Rwandese who are in Uganda are doing their normal business activities as they have done for the last maybe 50 years.
Uganda's Foreign Office says it's holding talks with Rwandan authorities to try to resolve the border dispute. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Ethiopia and Kenya have agreed to strengthen political and economic ties. The move is expected to benefit the entire East Africa region. Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta is on a 2-day official visit to Ethiopia and has held talks with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Both leaders have vowed to bolster their trade and investment ties. CGTN's Gurum Chala has more.
This is a close to 70 years of relationship and an ever-growing one too. That is what Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said while welcoming President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya.
So that the companies that are already...
Both Prime Minister Abiy and President Uhuru have then opened the Kenya-Ethiopia high-level trade and investment forum. While addressing the crowd, Abiy said the time is now to boost the Ethiopia-Kenya all-rounded ties.
Over the past 10 months, we've been working diligently to sustain our economic growth. That Ethiopia has succeeded in registering achievements in promotion and attraction of foreign direct investment. And we are well aware that we can grow even faster through cooperation, where specifically with Kenya and with my dear brother, President Uhuru Kenyatta.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, who came with more than 100 private sector actors and investors from across Kenya, said both nations must work to boost the current negligible trade volume between the two neighbors.
While Kenya and Ethiopia enjoy a healthy and thriving economic and trade relations, the volume of our trade is negligible compared to the potential that exists for our two countries. We therefore need to put together the necessary measures, infrastructure and framework to grow the quantum of this trade.
Ethiopia and Kenya have agreed to create a free trade zone in Moyale, convenient for both goods and services. The two sides have also vowed to harness the potentials of Lamu port through the regional infrastructure project now underway.
We need to accelerate plans to transform the Moyale region into a commonly administrated economic hub of East Africa, and proactively encourage private sector investments within the locality. Furthermore, we need to strengthen our joint pursuit of development, the Lamu port, and the construction of the Lamu, South Sudan, Ethiopia transport corridor.
Kenya and Ethiopia resolved to partner in developing first-class infrastructure projects connecting our two great nations and our continent. And by this, I have projects, as has been mentioned by Dr. Abe, the Lapset corridor, which Kenya is fully committed to.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, as he continues his trip to Ethiopia, is also scheduled to meet Ethiopia's President Sahle-Work Zewde. The two will further discuss ways of additionally advancing the bilateral ties. Analysts tell you Ethiopia and Kenya are two important countries of Eastern Africa, which are playing a key role in advancing peace and security as well as development across the entire region. They also say the official visit of President Uhuru Kenyatta to Ethiopia now is a clear testimony of an ever stronger commitment of the two countries for regional benefits. Group Data CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Moving on to Nigeria now, the country's National Electoral Commission has met behind closed doors to review Saturday's rescheduled polls. Now, among those attending the meeting were INEC officials as well as resident electoral commissioners from the country's 36 states. The meeting is also an effort to prepare for governorship and state assembly elections due on March 9th. The meeting comes after the electoral body declared President Muhammadu Buhari the winner of the 2019 elections. Buhari defeated his main contender, Atiku Abubakar, after securing 56% of the vote. Abubakar has, however, rejected the results and has said a legal challenge is likely to ensue. INEC says reviewing the polls is a necessary step in strengthening the electoral process.
I thought that since the resident electoral commissioners were here with the state collation officers for the presidential election, it is important for us to meet and review the experiences of the last election with a view to strengthening our processes towards the successful conduct of the state elections on Saturday, March the 9th. We have gone very far with all the arrangements for the elections. Elections will hold on March the 9th for the election of governors of states as well as members of the state assemblies.
Well, time now for a short break. Here's what's still ahead on the program. South Africa's cabinet approves an action plan to combat racism. And in the DRC, 4 patients are missing following an attack on an Ebola treatment center.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
To South Africa now, where the country's cabinet has announced the approval of a long-awaited national action plan to combat racial discrimination and xenophobia. This amid a surge in racism. The country has registered a spike in racist events which continue to polarize communities and races throughout the country. The NAP is expected to contribute to the government's compliance with international and regional obligations, including as signatory to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination and the 3rd UN World Conference Against Racism. South Africans have welcomed the government's commitment to stamping out all forms of racism.
Well, I believe that the government's national plan is a very good thing because it brings back the spirit of unity and equality back to South Africans. So we really need equality since we come from different races and it's different people all around. So we need a way in order for us to be able to work together as a country.
I think it's a very good plan because a lot of people they tend to feel inferior to the other races because they have more privileges. I think it's a really good plan and it will help a lot in the long run.
It's just purely discrimination and racism is wrong, and I think people should be equal in every way and live in, because we are a very diverse population and it's only fair to all have equal rights.
Let's head to the Democratic Republic of Congo now, where the medical NGO Médecins Sans Frontières has announced the suspension of operations in the epicenter of an Ebola outbreak. This follows an attack on one of its treatment centers on Wednesday, which was burnt to the ground. No patient was injured or killed. Here's more on that now.
The attack on this treatment center on Wednesday night left most of the structures and vehicles gutted down. The center in North Kivu's Katwa town was serving over 38 patients. Medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières officials say it's the second similar attack.
We are still investigating. The attack was quite well organized. They set fire to areas that were not for treatment, like the changing and utility rooms, which were burnt down. But in any case, the treatment center is no longer operational whatsoever. What you need to keep in mind is that last night, at about 5:30, the other treatment center in Butembo, which is managed by MSF teams in collaboration with the Health Ministry, was also attacked in the same way.
Patients and workers are safe. However, 4 of them who had been confirmed to have contracted the Ebola virus escaped and are being sought. Aid workers have raised concern over the security in the region.
That's an issue that aid workers in high-risk areas have had since the beginning of the intervention. This is the first time an Ebola outbreak has happened in such an unstable and insecure area like Eastern Congo. It is a challenge for us on a daily basis for all the teams who answer the call to fight against the epidemic. The events in the last 48 hours definitely are indeed a big deal. But even so, what seems important to us is that Eastern Congo is a zone we know particularly well, where MSF has intervened for a long time regarding access to healthcare. It is also important to us to reinforce our will to treat and help sick patients.
Dozens of militias operate in Eastern Congo, but none of the armed groups has claimed responsibility for this latest attack. At least 553 people have died in eastern DR Congo in what has been termed as the second deadliest outbreak of Ebola ever since the disease was discovered in 1976. Nomokugu, CGTN.
Well, staying with this story, authorities in the DRC are searching for 4 Ebola patients who fled the treatment center after that attack by unidentified gunmen. Now, health officials fear the missing patients will spread the infectious disease even further. The 29 Ebola outbreak is the second largest to date, with 555 deaths reported so far. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa has more.
The attack on an Ebola treatment center in the eastern city of Butembo on Wednesday left 4 patients missing. Health authorities are now searching for the patients who were confirmed to have the highly infectious disease. armed gunmen attacked the treatment center run by Doctors Without Borders and the Congolese Health Ministry. The assailants are also reported to have set fire to another clinic in eastern DRC, killing one person. The medical aid group announced a temporary suspension of operations in the area following the attack, which is the second in 4 days. The health ministry says other patients who fled the attack were found and have been transferred to another location. The latest attack has raised fears of the further spread of the Ebola outbreak in eastern DRC. This is the country's 10th Ebola outbreak. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The flow of illicit arms in Africa remains a pressing issue on the continent. The UN Security Council recently adopted a resolution to coordinate efforts with the AU to end the illegal arms market.
The UN Security Council took a significant step towards ending the illicit arms flow in Africa. The Council adopted a resolution to strike the joint efforts by the UN and the AU to coordinate efforts to stop the flow of illicit arms. Equatorial Guinea introduced the resolution.
There is an urgent need for Africa to accelerate the process of combating, preventing and eradicating the illicit trade of small arms and light weapons in all its aspects.
The joint coordination will help with the implementation of the AU Master Roadmap of practical steps to silence the guns in Africa. The roadmap, first introduced in 2013, looks to end the illicit arms flow by 2020. While fragile stability has returned to countries such as DRC and South Sudan, worries still remain illicit arms could inflame other conflicts.
Many parts of Africa are reaching a dangerous tipping point, and we are currently in a race against time. Transformation to deal with root causes and the deep structural challenges will take between 10 and 20 years to address. In the meanwhile, protracted conflicts ranging from the violent street protests to civil war, from radicalized terror insurgencies to criminal insurgencies, will characterize large part of the continent.
With a large number of armed conflicts in the world happening in Africa, the Security Council resolution looks to move one step closer to disarming them. Astatal, CGTN.
China is donating more than 9,500 metric tons of rice and anti-malaria drugs to South Sudan. Beijing says it has earmarked $15 million for emergency food aid and medicine for South Sudan as a 5-year civil war comes to an end. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
The United Nations says security situation is improving in South Sudan, but for 5 years, many here who depend on agriculture have not been farming. The UN says more than 6 million South Sudanese people are in need of humanitarian assistance. China is donating rice to try and help mitigate the food shortage.
We are very glad to see that the revitalized peace agreement is now under implementation. So we hope with the implementation of the peace agreement, the situation will get better and better.
One of South Sudan's other challenges is its poor road network. Getting the donated rice to the needy population in rural areas remains a challenge. Juba says it's working to ensure that China aid reaches all parts of the country before the rainy season begins.
His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit has allocated some funds for transportation of the rice to the states and to those areas where it is most needed.
China is also donating anti-malaria drugs to South Sudan's Ministry of Health. President Kiir's government says it's engaging more with China to get assistance in other sectors of the economy, such as infrastructure development.
The relationship between our two peoples and two governments is growing and yielding fruits.
And South Sudan hopes this rise can make an impact on the lives of people who need it. Experts say humanitarian needs in South Sudan are likely to increase as peace returns to the country. That's because many displaced people are going back to their homes, but finding their livelihoods have been totally destroyed.
due to the war, so aid will be crucial in helping people get back on their feet. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
And Roman Young is back with your business news.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Here's what's coming up in business. The former Deputy Central Bank Governor of Liberia has been arrested over a money printing scandal. And Kenya and Ethiopia renewing their commitment to a $25 billion infrastructure project. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start in West Africa, where the son of Liberia's former president, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, has been arrested in connection to the illegal printing of more than $104 million in banknotes. Charles Sirleaf was the deputy governor of the Central Bank of Liberia at the time of the incident in March 2018. His former boss, Milton Weeks, has also been arrested. This comes after the release of an investigation report detailing alleged widespread malpractice. The investigation company, Kroll Associates, started its probe in October after the equivalent of 5% of the country's GDP in cash vanished. Liberia's central bank was found to have acted unlawfully by printing and importing 3 times the amount of banknotes that it had been authorized to do. Over in East Africa, Kenya and Ethiopia have renewed their commitment to implementing the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia transport corridor. It's more commonly known on this end of the world as LAPSET. This is a vast $25 billion infrastructure plan which governments in the region have argued for years now is vital to unlocking the economic potential of East Africa and the Horn as well. Speaking at a trade forum in Addis Ababa, President Kenyatta and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali promised to deepen trade and economic ties between the two countries. They also called for the fast-tracking of the transformation of Moyale town into a trade hub, as per a special status agreement they both agreed to in 2012. President Kenyatta is in Ethiopia for a 2-day visit.
Two nations have enjoyed a historical bond that has been a strong foundation of our strategic partnership. Today's mission, therefore, offers us a unique opportunity to chart a path for our common prosperity through robust economic and trade relations. I believe this mission is timely, happening at a time when, under your leadership, Prime Minister, the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia is undergoing fundamental political and economic transformation.
Kenya and Ethiopia have and continue to enjoy strong socio-economic and political identity rooted in mutual respect, understanding, and deep sense of solidarity.
Speaking of the Horn of Africa, Dubai's state-owned port operator DP World has entered into a partnership with the government of the self-declared Republic of Somaliland in order to build the Berbera corridor. Now, DP World will hold 51% of equity in that project, Somaliland will hold 30%, and Ethiopia will hold on to a 19% stake in the port of Berbera. CGTN's Alexandria Majala filed this report from the Somaliland capital of Hargeisa.
Dancing in celebration marked the Berbera corridor groundbreaking ceremony. Here in the outskirts of Somaliland's capital, Hargeisa, President Musa Bihi Abdi presided over the event. The new corridor is being funded by the United Arab Emirates, whom have allocated an open budget for the massive project.
The existing road will be removed and the new asphalt road will be constructed. And this will serve all the, the movement from Berbera to Togwakele.
The project, which is expected to take 22 months to complete, is receiving support from Ethiopia as well. Ethiopia, who is landlocked and has large Somali communities living in the country, is a natural trading partner for Somaliland on the project. The country has a 19% stake in the corridor that will link the two countries via highways and railways.
This road is very essential for the cooperation between, to make the relation between Ethiopia and Somaliland. It will increase the business because we have the port here, and the port will need roads, and this is very important things. Yeah. It will create a job also for the people of Somaliland.
The new corridor will be executed in 3 phases, with DP World pledging $50 million for Phase 1, the economic free zone. Modeled on DP World's Jebel Ali Free Zone in Dubai, the project will stimulate secondary investments in a range of businesses including warehousing, logistics, traders and manufacturers.
There are big opportunities for private sector to deliver solutions in our infrastructure. The aim of this project is to improve the economical development and social integration of the Horn of Africa and countries bordering Lake Victoria.
The 241-kilometer road that will connect Ethiopia to the Berbera port will cut right through Hargeisa, Somaliland's capital. It is expected to significantly boost the country's economy. Berbera hopes to regain its importance as an import-export hub in the Horn of Africa region and perhaps draw some business from East Africa as well. Alexandria Majala, Hargeisa, Somaliland.
Right then, on to East Africa. Tanzania has revoked licenses for some foreign exchange bureaus in the commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. In a statement, the central bank over there said that these companies had been, as far as it's concerned, operating illegally. Now, the move by the Apex Bank indicates that the government is serious about cracking down on parallel market currency traders. The crackdown is taking place as a local currency, the Tanzanian shilling, weakens against the dollar. Data from the central bank shows that the value of the Tanzanian shilling has eased by about 1/3% in the last 8 weeks. This depreciation does make it a bit more difficult for the country to service its external debt that stood at about $21 billion in December. Mozambique has filed a case in London's High Court against Credit Suisse. Now, the lender did help to arrange about $2 billion worth of government-guaranteed loans that effectively pushed Mozambique into a debt crisis once it did come to light. Locally, this is known as the tuna bond scandal. 3 former Credit Suisse bankers have already been indicted in the United States in connection to this scandal. Mozambique's former finance minister, Manuel Chang, was arrested in South Africa in December. He's fighting his extradition to the United States. Ndabi Gwebuza, he's the son of the former president, Amanda Gwebuza, has also been arrested in connection to the scandal. So far, 9 people are in custody in connection to this event. Mozambique's economy has been in crisis since 2016, when it emerged that the country had more than $2 billion of previously undisclosed public debt. The loans were marketed as investments and schemes, but a proportion of the money has not yet been accounted for. South Africa's president has officially opened Vedanta's Gamsberg mine in the country's Northern Cape province. The $400 million zinc project has an estimated lifespan of over 13 years, and it aims to exploit one of the largest known but as yet undeveloped zinc ore bodies in the world. CGTN's Angelo Coppola was there.
The second phase will see another $400 million investment as part of a total $1 billion project plan. And South African President Cyril Ramaphosa joined others to officially open the mine.
As a government, that's what really pleases us, that we've got partners in building our country, our economy, who are serious about what they do, about investments, but more importantly about looking after the people who work here.
$400 million of a planned $1 billion has already been invested, and some $40 million of that has gone towards HR and human development.
Some of the opportunities, not just business or corporate-wise, would be that the department itself ensures that its graduates are exposed to every single facet that geology has. So since graduating, there's so many things that I've learned here that I've never been exposed to in university.
From geology through to mining and finally processing, the mine uses state-of-the-art technology and highly skilled staff to get the job done.
That's where the milling and the splitting takes place. The big sample is the sample that's stored for archiving. The small one is the one that we are doing the actual test on. So from here, the sample will go to the weighing, they will weigh it, and from there it will go to the XRF, so they will get the result.
Most of the zinc sampling and processing is controlled electronically, but it still needs a human touch.
What's happening here is everything that's happening in the circle, both circles, shows on the screen. I'm just monitoring to see that everything is fine, the process runs smoothly. If there's any breakdowns, like minor breakdowns, then I can see what I can do. Then I do first line maintenance.
This is almost half of a $1 billion investment plan for this mine, and it's a good sign of a level of confidence in the future of the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in the Northern Cape.
I'll leave you there for the time being, but I'll be back at the top of the hour. We'll be taking a deeper look at that case that Mozambique's government has filed in London's High Court against Credit Suisse. Exactly what is it that they're alleging and what evidence are they bringing to the table? We'll engage in that conversation from Johannesburg and London at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, though, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Rama. Well, do stay with us on Africa Live. More news is still ahead.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
And now to Pakistan. The country has released the downed Indian pilot amid a tense standoff between the nuclear-armed neighbors. The pilot was shot down while flying a fighter jet that crashed in Pakistani territory. The international community has urged restraint from the two nations as tensions escalated following a suicide car bombing that killed at least 40 Indian police last month. Indian military officials say they will welcome the return of the captured pilots, but have refused to confirm if they will de-escalate the conflict between the two nuclear powers. In Rwanda, a Somali refugee has found an enabling environment for entrepreneurship in the capital, Kigali. The refugee has also found love after fleeing conflict in Somalia 2 decades ago.
Ali Abdi fled Somalia 2 decades ago as war raged in Somalia and found refuge in Rwanda's capital, Kigali. Like many newly displaced refugees, he was unsure of where to start. Kigali not only provided refuge, it's here that he also met Jasmine Mukagashagaza, a Rwandese who later became his wife. His wife helped him navigate the new environment and adapt to his new life in exile.
When I came, I didn't know the language, and my wife lived close by. She's from this country. She taught me a lot, and now I can be independent.
Ali runs a retail shop in Kigali where refugees have a right to work. After 2 decades in Rwanda, Ali feels very much at home here.
Sometimes I forget I'm a refugee. I only remember when I see my refugee card. I live like any other citizen in this country. I speak the language.
He is also proving wrong those who think that refugees are a burden to the society. Years of work have paid off. The couple has built a home here for their family. They intend to give their 5 children the best in life.
Some people believe that refugees should only live in camps, that a refugee cannot build a house, that a refugee cannot work. I want them to learn and work hard, so they do not have to face the same problems as I did. That's all I dream about.
Rwanda currently hosts over 150,000 refugees, with about 12,000 of them living in urban cities like Kigali. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Now to Ethiopia. Every weekend, hundreds of residents of Addis Ababa sweat it out together at the city's main square. Fitness instructor Abdul Fattah Muzayin leads his sessions for free, hoping to get as many people as possible to exercise. While life expectancy has improved, lifestyle diseases are on the rise across Africa.
Every Sunday morning, Addis Ababa's residents gather in Meskel Square to exercise with Abdul Fattah Muzayin. The fitness instructor's free sessions take hundreds of participants through simple aerobic routines.
A good friend of mine who used to exercise here brought me 3 years ago. Since then, I never miss a single day unless something urgent comes up. I really look forward to Sundays.
I will continue exercising with this group for a long time. I enjoy the fun of working with many people. Working out with a group helps boost your morale. I like everything about it. I will continue working out with them unless I am sick or something.
Meskel Square is a popular hub at the weekends. Muzayin noticed that whenever he was working out with his friends, people wanted to join in. So in 2003, he began his classes that include cardio training and toning. For those who can't afford the gym, working out with Muzayin is a way to have fun and get fit.
The response from the people is amazing. It's really gratifying. There are all kinds of people here, young, old, male, female, and children. I don't make them do heavy exercises. I want them to exercise in a fun way so that they just sweat and go home.
Lifestyle diseases like diabetes and cancer are on the rise in Africa. Unhealthy diets, lack of exercise, smoking, and alcohol are all contributing factors, according to the World Health Organization.
A lot of them talk to me after we finish exercising. I tell them once a week is not enough. Even the busiest person should exercise at least 3 times a week. I only exercise here once a week and do the rest of the week at a gym.
There is a growing public health concern that conditions like obesity and high blood pressure threaten to reach epidemic proportions. To back this trend, Muzayin wants as many Ethiopians as possible to get fit. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And here's what's coming up in your sports news up next. South Africa ready to defend their Las Vegas Sevens title.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way.
Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
South Africa's Rugby Sevens team find themselves in Pool C with England, Japan and Chile for the Las Vegas stop of the World Sevens Series circuit. It is a huge tournament for the four-time winners who desperately need to claim a cup title to stand any chance at all of retaining their global title.